Hi, I'm Libby Gibson, Town Manager. Welcome to a special edition of What's Going On in Town Government. This is Town Meeting wrap-up, follow-up, highlights, Town Meeting highlights.
For those who
were not able to attend, who did not go, and should have. I never tell people that.
Well, I'm telling them.
They get mad. For those who didn't attend, who of course are interested, because who wouldn't be, in what happened, I'm going to review the significant articles or actions that occurred. So we have, town meeting starts Saturday morning, March 31st at 8:30 a.m. We have the community band. They play great. We have the Boy Scout, Girl Scout troops come up. They post the colors, which means they put the flags up. And we had a really nice tribute to former town moderator and community volunteer Wayne Holmes. Tim Madden, our state representative, came and presented Wayne's family, his sons and granddaughter, with a really nice legislative citation which outlined his achievements. So that was great. We also recognized some other people that worked for the town in some way or another over the years who passed away since the last town meeting. And then we got into an overview of how town meeting goes and the usual review of the rules and stuff like that, and then the technical amendments, which, as I've said a million times, are very tedious to go through, and they are numerous, and they were more numerous this year because of some last minute stuff that happened before town meeting. It's a little unusual to have them that long and boring.
For those people that don't go to town meeting, when a technical amendment is changing the actual words.
A technical amendment is a change to the motion to an article. The Finance Committee has a motion to every article except for the zoning articles, to which the Planning Board has a motion. And often there are things that occur after the warrant is published with the motions that must be changed. For example, an address to a real estate or a zoning article is transposed. It's got to be fixed. We had a lot of financial ones this year because our free cash wasn't certified until just before town meeting, and a lot of the articles were waiting, the motions were waiting for free cash to be certified before final numbers could be put in. So we had to put in all the final numbers. I'm trying to think of what else there was. We had some collective bargaining agreements that weren't completed for negotiations by the time the warrant was printed. We had to do motions to that. The Finance Committee, in the booklet that went out to people, had something under the collective bargaining articles that said motion to be provided at town meeting. So that was a technical amendment. So anyway, the technical amendments took a while to get through, but we finally got through them, and then we go through the call of the articles. Now, I'm told that not every community goes through this call of the articles. They go through every article. Can you imagine? Although a lot of communities do not have 97 articles on their warrant. They have 30 or 40. So that's just their MO. They
don't call them.
They don't call them, they just go through them.
Right.
But we obviously have too many to do that, so we do a call. So I'm going to say about a third were called, and of the third that were called over the 2 days of town meeting, several calls were withdrawn because people either lost interest or didn't want to talk about it anymore, or their question was answered to their satisfaction and they didn't need to pursue it. So I'm not going to go through every single article, but we had several airport-related articles which used general fund sources to fund temporarily. We are going to get the money back over time from the airport, hopefully within the next 1 to 3 years. They promised, and they will keep their promise. And we've had many, many, many meetings and discussions about this. So the airport articles did make it through. There were a couple of questions about it, but I think overall people, while perhaps disappointed that this had to come to this, were supportive of the actions to resolve so that we can move forward. Article 12, I found this quite interesting. Construction of Hummock Pond Road bicycle path, the debt exclusion override for $3.2 million, did not even get called. No discussion at all.
Just give it to them.
Just give it to them. Now there is a donation, a private donation, that is expected to offset the $3.2 million cost of at least $500,000, and that was well known.
Someone is privately offering $500,000.
Correct, provided that the construction of the bike path starts as soon as possible, and we have a bike path ready to go by next Memorial Day, May of 2013. So that's
That'll
the
be
plan.
nice.
It's going to take some scrambling on our part, but we've gone
So
through
most everybody
the
was
timing.
in favor of that?
They must have been, because
Nobody
nobody
got it?
called it.
Okay.
It is subject, though, to a debt exclusion override, which is on next week's annual town election ballot, Tuesday, April 10th. You will need to vote yes or no on that. And I can't say which way, I don't think,
I
now
think
the
it's
town
kind of
meeting's over.
obvious, though, if you want it.
The town supports the article, obviously.
there you go.
So, anyway, but it was really interesting that it didn't even get called. And then we got into Article 13, the wind turbine at the Mattocket landfill. To make a long story short, that was the item that had the most debate, probably, obviously. And it was defeated in the end.
Yep.
By 2-1, about?
Easily.
Yeah.
Wasn't even close.
Wasn't even close. There are, Falmouth has a town meeting which starts, I think it might have started last night or it starts tonight. They have a wind turbine article on there as well. It's not like ours exactly, but it's something to do with wind turbine, which is expected to be very contentious.
Well, they got one that doesn't work properly.
Right.
So that's part of the
They have a lot
equation.
of other issues.
Yeah, right.
Some of which we do not have at all. But anyway, so there was a lot of debate about that article. And again, I'm not going through every article, but a couple of other ones that caused some debate were Article 31, which was a Community Preservation Committee recommendations for fiscal 13. They review, let me back up. The town, there's a surcharge on tax bills of 3% for what is known as the Community Preservation Act. And that funding is meant to go to very specific categories of projects: recreational, open space, affordable housing, and historic preservation. I think I've covered it all. And so there was an affordable housing item for $990,000 for the development of the Sachem's Path 40B, which is intersection of Old South Road and Surfside Road. Based on what I had heard and seen at FinCom, Finance Committee meetings, up till town meeting, I thought this was going to be much more contentious than it turned out to be. And it passed. It was adopted.
But the FinCom voted against it.
The FinCom did vote against it for a variety of reasons, which I won't get into right now because that's their thing. But they spend a lot of time on this, and I mean they spend a good amount of time on every article, and they don't make a motion. They don't make a motion to the warrant article unless they are, they've done a lot of review. So that's a frustration that perhaps people on the town side have with some of the activities and comments at town meeting, is that a lot of people have spent a massive amount of time developing motions, doing research, running numbers, doing the analysis, preparing the wording and the language. And there are some questions sometimes that come up at town meeting which make it sound as though nobody's done their homework or nobody's really worked on this. And they have, in a big way. So anyway, maybe we need to do a better job of letting people know when the meetings are, what the topics of discussion are, what is being brought up in a broader way. So I did look through some other towns' information while we were at town meeting, and it's all over the board, but I got some good information from a couple of places that I'm going to work into next year's sort of PR about town meeting. In any event, Sachem's Path did ultimately pass. Article 32, which was for the development of an artificial turf playing field on Nobodere Farm Road, was another CPC article, Community Preservation Committee article. And that's a project that's about $1 million that will be borrowed for, but it didn't require an election vote, a ballot vote, because the funding is going to be, the debt service is going to be paid back from the community preservation funds. And they have a schedule, and they will be paying the debt service from there. So it will be budgeted annually.
Okay, so I have a question about the way it's, how we get that money, both for
Yes.
Sachem's Path and this. So you're saying that a percentage of every real estate transaction?
No, it's a percentage of the tax bill. There's a
Oh, I
3%
see.
surcharge on every tax bill.
I got you. The land
But
bank
I'm
is
glad
the 3%.
the land bank is a 2% real estate
2%,
transfer
got
tax
it.
on all real estate transactions. The CPC, the funding that comes from the taxpayers for the CPC is matched by the state. It used to be well, it never probably was a 100% match. And now that more communities have signed on, it's less than that. But there is a match,
Well,
and the percentage varies.
Okay. We don't
I shouldn't say a match. There are funds that come from the state to all of the communities that have accepted the Community Preservation Act to help with the projects. So we do get a portion of this funding from the state.
And this thing has been around for a long time.
It's been around for,
and it's done a lot of good
several
stuff.
years. A lot, yes.
I think most
very
people
much so.
think that.
And you can go onto their website and look at the various projects that have been approved over the years. And they have a session, I want to say it's in August or September every year, where they explain how the funding works, they explain what an application requires, they explain what the categories of funding are. And they get a lot of applications. They do not ever have enough money to fund them all. But they have to wade through the applications too, because sometimes people think their project might be eligible, but it turns out it really isn't eligible. So anyway, it's a very hard-working committee, and they spend a lot of time also on all of their project requests. So the No Deer playing field item passed. That's again, that's an artificial turf field.
I would have thought that would have had some
much more debate. I know, because a couple of years ago, artificial turf, that issue alone was controversial, but.
$1 million for artificial turf.
I know.
Seems like a lot.
It does seem like a lot, but I guess
$1 million.
I'm not sure. This is probably an oversimplification, and I'm not sure it's accurate for me to say this, but I think some people feel like it's almost 6 to 1, half dozen to the other about a natural grass playing field and all of the maintenance that's required over a period of time versus the artificial turf field, which is an initial outlay of expense, but the maintenance is far less.
Do we have a field now there?
We have the Delta fields, so-called, on the airport side of the road. Well, I don't know what direction that is.
I know
what
what
is
you're
that?
saying.
East.
It's on the other
side
side
of the road. Yes, and then
yeah,
there are
that is.
fields on the other side of the road, the west side of the road. I hope that's correct direction. I'm not good with south, east, west. And those are under construction. And that's a CPC project that's been approved by town meeting. That is land bank property. There's a lease with the town and the land bank for playing fields to be there. Ultimately, I think there are 4 or 5 fields that I just forget right now, ultimately to be built out there. So another thing that passed at this town meeting was a field house for over there. But these fields are not ready yet. They might, if you're driving by in that area, they might start to look ready, but the fields require a growing season or 2 for the grass to really get established. So they won't be ready for play until next summer, the summer of 13.
And if that includes the artificial turf one?
No. I don't know about, I'm not even going to say about the artificial turf one. The artificial turf one should be ready before that, but there's a whole process to get the money borrowed and to establish the debt schedule, and that takes a while. So I'm not even going to say about the timing. It's a playing field, so it's soccer,
Could be football?
No, I don't think it's going to be football.
Okay.
No. Baseball, softball, lacrosse.
I don't think they'd have baseball. You need a baseball
Do you know,
field.
I don't know what it is.
All right. We're finding
I'm not a playing field. I'm not, that's not my department. No.
That doesn't have, that has artificial turf, but it has dirt too.
Wasn't that big on softball?
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so more on this later. Remember, I'm just talking about what happened at town meeting. I'm not talking about like what's going to happen from now on in everything. We had a number of sense of the meeting votes, which aren't really binding.
What do those mean?
Sometimes if people's articles are not supported by the Finance Committee or they're not really quite exactly fully legal, people like to get a sense of the meeting. How do people feel about what I'm trying to do? So we had a sense of the meeting on Article 30-something. Let me just flip through here. I should know this by heart. I've certainly looked at this enough. I take that. I don't remember what it was. It might have been the. Oh, I know. Article 34, the Comprehensive Tick-Borne Disease Program. There was a sense of the meeting on that. There was an issue with the way that article was worded and some confusion about what fiscal year it was meant to start in. and whether or not the funding was available for fiscal 13. So anyway, there ended up being a kind of a resolution, a sense of the meeting vote. Does the town want the Board of Health to seek funding for a tick-borne disease program? Yes, everybody voted yes. Who's going to vote no on that? So there were a couple of those, but again, they're non-binding. They don't really mean anything. They're not legally committing the town to anything. So we had a couple of those. We had a lot of zoning, a lot of real estate, home rule petitions, bylaw amendments. And I won't even go into any of that because honestly, zoning, who can sit through zoning except for the planning staff and people who are really interested. I just can't sit through it.
All right, yeah, we don't.
So I'm not even going to go there. The bylaw amendments that caused, I think, the most discussion were the coastal property management bylaws. And this all related to erosion control measures on the east side of the island, Sconset Bluff Preservation Committee project. And that was a lot of discussion last night. That started on Saturday. We ended on Saturday about 5-ish, I believe. And we ended on Article 61. We continued the discussion till Monday night, last night at 6. We got out of there, what time, 9:30-ish? It seemed like longer. But we finished, so that's great. And anyway, we left off at 61 on Saturday, continued it to Monday, and then went through the rest of them. There were several others.
Well, what happened with
they
the
had
Wisconsin
amendments.
Beach erosion thing?
All right, Gino, don't hold me to this because I admit even I got a little bit confused by this.
I heard that it was passed, though.
Well, there was a motion and then there was an amendment.
Or the Concom?
Well, the project itself is at the Concom level. The Concom has denied the project in its current
Explain
form.
it so that people understand what the project is who don't know.
Okay, well, remember, I'm not really in, the project's not my area, but it's a, I don't know if I can explain it very well.
Well, it has to do with allowing the people that are part of
the overall concept.
Yeah, the overall concept,
okay.
so people understand what that is.
As people probably know, some areas of Sconset Bluff are eroding very quickly, and houses have had to be moved back, and some houses have had to be removed altogether because there isn't anywhere else to put them. So there's a legitimate concern of the private property owners and the town for infrastructure purposes like Baxter Road and the Sconset Bluff Walk about how to prevent the erosion. Now, obviously, there are people who say you cannot prevent erosion. It's Mother Nature. It's just going to happen. Let it. And there are other people who say you can certainly install various types of erosion control measures to prolong the life of the bluff and the property values and all of that. So the property owners have, and there is town property that we are talking about, so property owners got together and put forward a project proposal to the Conservation Commission, which is required, and the Conservation Commission, after months of hearing, has denied the project. And it is now in an appeal stage. So these articles dealt with things like, and I won't get too specific, just be overall general, things like whether or not projects like this need to come back to town meeting for approval, or for approval of a license for them, or for approval of the lease of land to do the projects on town land, or whether or not that's a selectman's responsibility. There was a lot of back and forth about that, and ultimately I believe the motion was amended and passed, but honestly I didn't keep track of what exactly changed in the end because it was a bit confusing, but something passed. Something passed,
that's right. They got a chance to go back to Concom again and say, look, with momentum behind them now, a little bit of momentum,
yeah, although
they have a chance at trying something.
I'm not even sure about that.
Right.
I mean, I'm not even going to comment.
You're not even sure about that, okay.
Well, I'm not sure about going back to Concom right now.
Oh, okay, gotcha. It's not at that stage.
I don't think it's quite at that stage because there is an appeal in progress.
Right.
There was a citizen petition for parking structures, the regulation of, like, for example, let's just get right to the point, a parking garage downtown. And basically the proposal was that a multi-story parking structure cannot be constructed without a town meeting vote. There was a lot of discussion about whether this was legal or not, and ultimately it did not pass. We had a lot of debate over a change to the Community Preservation Committee bylaw, and specifically the membership of that committee, whether or not the members, a couple of the members, should be members of the board or commission which is meant to be on the Community Preservation Committee. So for example, the Land Bank and the Board of Selectmen both are allowed to have a designee on the committee. So the discussion and the proposal was, should the designee be somebody who is not on that board or commission, or who is? And there was a lot of discussion about that. There was discussion about whether or not the Historic District Commission should be represented, and or the Historical Commission. They are different. The Historical Commission is a lesser-known group that deals with historic preservation issues, but they are not a regulatory agency. You don't go to them for permits or anything like that. That is the HDC's statutory job. And there was something else, but I can't remember what it was now. So there was a lot of discussion about that, and ultimately the original motion, the original article that was printed in the warrant, not the Finance Committee motion, passed, which was what the Community Preservation Committee had asked the selectmen to put in the warrant in the first place. That ended up passing. Let's see. Those are the highlights, Gino.
Yeah.
Those are the items I think
that
took the most discussion. Now, do you have any questions? I know you do.
You did a great job just laying out the big ones here, and aside from that, if anybody wants to do something for next year, and what would you suggest?
Well, it became a little obvious to me that we need to do, like I said earlier, a better job of letting people know how this process works. Turn that off.
I did.
Letting people know how that process works, ranging from how a citizen submits an article, to what the review process is, to what the timing is, to what happens actually at town meeting. There were a couple of instances where people were upset and angry because their item did not go the way they wanted it to, because perhaps they weren't familiar enough with the procedure. Maybe we haven't explained it properly enough. So I'm going to be working on that for next year. But basically it takes 10 signatures to submit a petitioned article of registered voters in Nantucket. And people submit all manner of petitions. We have a lot of citizen petitions. Most towns don't have nearly the number of citizen petitions that we do. We do offer a couple of days in the fall where town council will come here and spend a half a day or a couple of hours meeting with people that is my phone now, I should turn it off. Meeting with people to review what they are trying to do and help them get it to be legal. Sometimes there is a conflict between what somebody wants to do and what the town policy is. And that is one of the problems that occurred at this year's town meeting. And you see that every now and then. That's just the democratic process, and that's how it works. So anyway, there is some information now on the website about how to get your citizen article done, and there's a schedule on there about when the FinCom meets and when the Board of Selectmen meets and Planning Board and all of the boards that weigh in. But it could be a little bit better organized and explained, I think. So that's something that we're going to be working on for next year.
Okay. All right, so just to wrap it up, how would you define this town meeting compared to others?
It was on a Saturday, which was a first for us.
And do you think that was?
I think it went okay. What I noticed is there were a lot of people there in the morning, huge turnout in the morning. At lunch, a lot of people left, and that might have either been lunch or Article 13 was done by then. That was the wind turbine article. The weather wasn't very good on Saturday, so I think that might have helped get people into town meeting, because this time of the year, if it's warm enough, people want to be outside doing yard work and stuff. So that's a competing difficulty with a Saturday.
I had to get a babysitter.
Well,
too, so
people had to get babysitters,
yeah.
Or only one parent could come,
right.
Or they couldn't come at all because they couldn't get the babysitter. And is it a babysitter-worthy event? Some people would say yes, some people would say no.
Right.
So you're fighting with that, but you're fighting with that anyway. If we had done it the traditional way in the evening, you still have that problem. So anyway, I think Saturday is worth trying again. Perhaps it would have been nice to get all done in one day, even if we had to go a little bit longer. But quite frankly, I think on this particular Saturday by 5, people were pretty spent, and they were just done. Right. That's a long time.
That is a long time.
All day to sit there and listen. I mean, it's mentally draining, really.
Normally, town meetings last 3 days, 3 nights.
I'd say on average, yep.
Okay.
3 nights. So. It probably took ultimately about the same amount of hours, but it is also, I don't know, it's maybe it's 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other again, but getting it done in a day almost, to me, is a little better than going multiple nights, because you've worked all day and then you have to go to town meeting at night, and by 8 o'clock you're tired and you don't sleep well, and then you have to do it all over again the next day. So I kind of think Saturday's worth trying again anyway, and hopefully we probably are going to have a special town meeting this fall, so maybe we can get some of the zoning or real estate things done then and not have to do them at the annual, so it would be a little shorter of a warrant. So we'll see. The board is going to be talking about this at their meeting this Wednesday, the follow-up, kind of what I just talked about, but also how did Saturday go. And so remember, the annual town election, which does have 3 ballot questions on there, is next Tuesday, the 10th, and also all of the elected officials. But the only ballot question that's valid right now is Article 2, which is the Hummock Pond Road bike path. The other articles, Article 1 was renovations to 20 South Water Street. That was not approved at town meeting. The Finance Committee had a negative motion on that, so we didn't even talk about that. And Article 3 would have been the wind turbine, and that was defeated. So even if you vote yes on those articles at the election, it's not a valid, it's moot, basically. The only valid one is Article 2, Hummock Pond Road bike path. What else?
That's it.
That's it? Okay. Thanks very much. Are we doing the regular show this week?
Oh, yeah.
All right, we'll do the regular show too. This was a special edition from 2012 annual town meeting, wrapped up for this year. Thank you very much. See you next time.